Hi, I'm Randolph Miller, and welcome to Bounce Around Charleston on the afternoon of February 14th, 2018. A mass shooting occurred at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. 17 people were killed and 14 more were taken to the hospitals, making it one of the world's deadliest school massacres. The suspected perpetrator, 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz, was identified by witnesses and arrested shortly afterward. Would South Carolina students know what to do if a shooter entered their school? State Representative Marvin Pendarvis of District 113 North Charleston filed a bill last Tuesday that would require monthly active shooter drills at South Carolina public schools. He's here with us today for us to talk about the bill that he presented. Welcome to Bounce Around Charleston.
It's good to be here.
Yes, sir. Tell us a little bit about the bill that you presented.
Thank you. So, the bill I filed was on last Tuesday, and what it does is it requires all South Carolina public schools to do active shooter drills once a month. And it requires the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED, and the State Department of Education to come together and get a curriculum together in order to administer the training for the faculty and staff so that that training can be implemented, or those drills can be implemented throughout the year within the schools.
So are there any drills being enforced at this time?
There are, and they're around the state. There are certain schools that do them. There are certain districts that implement them, but there's no statewide mandate. And so what this bill does is it requires them to be in all the public schools throughout South Carolina.
And you want it to happen monthly?
Yes, sir.
So what would happen in these drills? What do you outline for them to do?
Well, that's what the SLED and the Department of Education will come up with. So I'll give you a little history about how the bill came to be, or at least how me filing the bill came to be. There's a study, a report that was done as a result of a task force that was formed in 2014 from the General Assembly. Mm-hmm. And it was a task force that was geared towards school safety. And what that task force did was it got together with stakeholders, education leaders, law enforcement officials, and other stakeholders to find out what can we do in South Carolina to make sure that our schools were safe. And that report culminated in 62 recommendations and best practices that the group came together and figured would be good to implement throughout the state. And 2 of those recommendations are included in my bill, and they're in the form of the active shooter drills, the live shooter drills, and then increasing the frequency by which we do them. I will say that what my bill does is it has mechanisms so that currently with the fire drills that we have and some of the other drills, so that we don't have some of that lost instruction time, replacing some of those with the active shooter drills, but continuing to do them monthly, and then having some yearly training for the faculty and staff so that they know exactly how these drills will look in their particular schools throughout the year. I do want to make note, of course, the drills will look different from the elementary level to the middle school level to the high school level, but again, that's why we've tasked the Department of Education and SLED to come together and figure out a curriculum that'll be able to make sure that those are well implemented in each level of our public schools here in South Carolina.
Thank you, sir. Have you heard what type of an impact this situation has had on public school students?
I've heard. I've seen. And those are some of the discussions that we've had in the General Assembly. It's a tragic situation all around. And the truth is we need to do something about gun control in our country. And unfortunately, Congress is moving extremely slow when it comes to putting in proactive measures to do something about the gun violence that we have. And so in South Carolina, that's why I've looked at what can we do to ensure that if a situation were ever to come to our doorstep, mm-hmm. to our front step, to say, how can we handle it? How can we make sure that our faculty, our teachers, our staff, and our students are best prepared to handle an unfortunate situation that would happen? But yes, this conversation around gun violence in this country is one that we are constantly having. It's a sad situation because we continue to have these conversations, but nothing is ever being done about it. We've got the Second Amendment folks who are constantly saying that it's an infringement upon Second Amendment rights about the gun legislation that have been proposed. But, you know, I would suggest to anyone, I mean, we've got to look at it from a practical standpoint, a common sense approach, and figure out exactly what can we do to ensure that these things don't happen within our schools. And in the unfortunate event that it does come to our doorsteps, how are we best prepared to handle it?
Yes, sir. Now, what does this do to the learning process of our students?
Well, as far as the learning process, I don't suspect it'll interfere with the learning process. There's one of those things, again, it's a preventive measure, it's a precautionary measure. What the bill does, you know, requiring drills is just in the event something like this does happen. What we need to do as far as the learning process, I don't want any students to lose any instruction time, which is why I've made provisions in the bill so that some of the current drills that we do have are replaced, and this is put in place of those drills. As far as the overall culture, again, in our state, in our nation, students are having those conversations with their parents. They're having those conversations with their peers about school safety, about, you know, is it safe for me to even go to school, no matter whether you're at the elementary or the high school level. So I think to address some of those things, we've got to continue looking at what we can do to provide some of the kind of support in our schools in order to make sure that these students are taken care of, and the answers to their questions are being had, and that we're actually having conversations about making sure they're protected while they're on campus.
You filed the bill, so where does it stand now?
So it's in the subcommittee, and just last Thursday it was assigned to the Education Committee and the Education and Public Works Committee, and it's going to probably be in their subcommittee, the K-12 subcommittee. So the committee process works, it'll go through a subcommittee. I'm hoping it'll get a hearing, and then after we get a hearing, it'll go to the full committee, and then at that point, then it'll be read throughout the House floor for us to be able to vote on, and then passed on over or put over to the Senate in order for them to go through the same process.
How do you feel about the support?
I feel good. When we filed the bill, I shopped it around and spoke to some of my colleagues in the General Assembly, especially in the House, to make sure that we were able to get some support, and I felt good about the support we did get. I certainly believe that we were able to get some bipartisan support on the bill. We got some bipartisan support as far as some of the people who signed on to it, so that's a positive sign. And I believe as it makes its way through the committee process, we will continue to gain some support. Because the truth is, it's a serious issue. We've got to do something about it. This is only one piece of the puzzle when it comes to addressing all the issues surrounding gun violence in our country. It's one piece, but it's a piece that I believe is an important one, and one that we'll be able to address in an efficient manner here in South Carolina.
Okay. The final thing I want to ask about, I know the metal detectors.
Yes, sir.
Someone talked about that.
Okay.
Do you think that would help also?
I believe, again, there's several, it's a big puzzle piece, and that's a part of it as well. Representative Wendell Gilliard filed a bill requiring metal detectors, and I was happy to support him in that effort. In fact, I signed on to the bill. And we just passed, not last week, but the week before, the House passed we read across the floor where we've got a study committee basically finding out the feasibility of doing metal detectors in all of the schools in South Carolina and how much that would cost, to see what the fiscal impact would be. But it's a conversation that he and I have had. It's certainly a conversation that you will see more and more people start having, if they haven't already, around the nation, about making sure we do everything we can to prevent this kind of stuff from meeting us at our doorstep. And then again, with my bill, in the event that it does, how are we prepared to handle that?
What about the talk about putting guns into the hands of teachers?
I'm against that. Totally. I don't think that's the direction we need to go into. There's this mindset, this ideology that is, the more we arm people, we're better prepared to address these situations. And I don't believe that that's the case. I don't believe, we have an issue already when it comes to making sure our teachers are paid adequately, making sure that we're supporting them financially in the classroom with the resources necessary in order to effectively teach their students. So if we're not doing a good job with that, how can we ask them to be bodyguard as well? So I'm against that. I think that's the wrong approach. And I think there are other ways that we can go about trying to address gun violence, and arming teachers is certainly not the way.
Okay. We want to thank State Representative Marvin Pendarvis for being here today to talk about the bill that he filed to help us have an active drill once a month in our public schools. You'll be hearing more about it. Thank you for being here on Bounce Around Charleston.
It's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we'll be right back after this break. We have a lot just for you.